We've met a couple times through the TED network, so it's fantastic. So Wendy is an avid coffee drinker, an entrepreneur, and a music fanatic. She first discovered her passion for business through starting two of her own businesses. Later took the lead, later this took her on to lead a team of Canadian youth on an international trade mission to China, representing the Canadian agriculture sector. A recent high school graduate, Wendy will be attending her first year at the University of Toronto, studying management and international business. After a year on the DECA High School Provincial Executive Officer team, Wendy currently serves as the Vice President of Delegate Experience on the TEDxYouth Board of Directors, and Wendy is here to share her idea with us. Can everyone please put their hands together for our final speaker of the day, Wendy.
Awesome. So, let's start back to 2014. Unlike other typical grade 10 students at the time, I knew exactly what I wanted to do and where my life was going. I wanted to pursue an engineering degree at a university in the States, then go get my MBA, and then spend the rest of my life climbing the corporate ladder. I was a good student with good grades and a future heavily dictated by my parents. And from the outside, everything looked fine. It looked like I had my whole life planned out. But I'm here to tell you guys that getting comfortable is one of the most dangerous things you can do for yourself because it inhibits your personal growth and prevents you from discovering your full potential. So, one of these slides. Let's go back. Okay, so I think we're missing one of the slides here, but I'm just gonna go with it. So, in 2014, that's when I was first introduced to TEDxYouth at Toronto. And this, on the day of the event, confused and alone, I was navigating the Science Center on my own, and I was completely blown away by how easy it was to talk to every single one of the delegates and be able to strike up a good conversation. I spent this day with 3 people I met who I still keep in touch with today, and one of them is here right now who called me 20 minutes before this event just to tell me that she was here, so shout out to you, Ronnie. And I think that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to these events, because of the passion and the energy in the air that you can feel days and maybe months after these events. So the reason why I got involved in TEDx, I gotta admit, it was because I was in love with figure skating and I skated competitively for 2 years. So obviously, seeing that Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer were going to be there, I was one of the first to jump on this opportunity. And though I have to admit, meeting 2 of my biggest role models growing up had to be one of the highlights in my life. I had to say it had to be Eric Chong's talk about going beyond people's expectations that really resonated with my life, and it's one of the reasons why I'm standing here today. So that same month, I came across an application to speak at a night golf event in my city. And as one of the most introverted 16-year-olds you ever would have met at the time, this is completely beyond my scope of abilities. But I chose to ignore my common sense and apply for it anyways. Even though I knew I was going to be competing against those who were more qualified than me by tenfold. And to my surprise, I became one of the youngest speakers to take Ignite Golf stage. But this event was a huge risk to me at the time. I mean, what if I screwed up on stage? What if I forgot what I had to say and blanked out in front of the audience? And what if people really didn't care what I had to say because I was young? But what I took away from this experience is that not taking a risk is actually the biggest risk you can take. I wanted to get away from my fear of public speaking, so what I had to do was get myself uncomfortable in a situation in order to do so. In this case, I was sharing my ideas in front of a room full of 100 adults. 5,126. That's the number of times it took James Dyson to create the first prototype, the Dyson vacuum cleaner, that took over 15 years to make. But what I'm getting at here is that vulnerability is uncomfortable. After speaking at the Ignite Golf event, I was reached out by my 6th grade teacher to go back to her class to speak to her class about my accomplishments after this Ignite Golf was shown to the students at a school assembly. So since it was the midst of my high school exam season, I rushed my first period a chemistry exam to slap together a very dismal looking PowerPoint, only to get there to be told that projector was broken. So there it was, just me in front of 60 eager 10-year-olds. And in the spur of the moment, I decided against what I was going to talk about. Instead of standing there and reciting my resume, I told them about my failures and setbacks. I told them about the time where I got 55 on my math test and cried for 4 days straight. Or when I lost a national entrepreneurship contest that I put my heart into and soul into for months. The reason why I did this is because of this quote that I read, and I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it. Give a man a fish and you can feed him for a day. Teach a man a fish and you can feed him for a lifetime. Being vulnerable allowed me to become human to these kids, and I was able to mentor them, a few of them, after this event. 10,000 times. That's how many times it took before Thomas Edison created the first prototype of the light bulb. But the media doesn't show all of these times that these two entrepreneurs have failed. They show the fame and the fortune that they have right now, not the blood, sweat, and tears and the years of hard work that got them to where they were. And being vulnerable allowed me to really connect with these students on a different level and not just become another resume or someone that they saw on the newspaper. So traditionally, what you choose to pursue post-secondary determines the path that your life will take. But as a 17-year-old myself, I believe that this has been completely blown out of proportion. Especially nowadays, entrepreneurship is a very real path that we should embrace as a choice, as a potential point of life. If there's no clear path, go out there and make your own. Sure, it might be uncomfortable because you have no one else to look up to, but that's the cost of becoming a pioneer in your own life. A lot of this comes from understanding our comfort zones and what our comfort zone is. So comfort zones sparks from our fight or flight instinct, which essentially what it is whenever our brain registers something that is foreign to us, it heightens our senses and increases our reaction times to get us ready to either fight or run away from whatever it is that threat. And since nowadays we're rarely chased by lions in the wild, a lot of our stressors come from are very abstract. So our fight or flight instinct can kick in before we make a big presentation or before a big job interview, even before we want to try something new that we've never done before, and we see this as a potential risk. But what we perceive as risks are often not risks at all. When we get into our comfort zone, we get used to that routine, that doing the same things over and over again puts ourselves on autopilot and lets us grind through the days by day without much thought. So what I did about this was, for a whole month straight, I went to bed at 8 p.m. and woke up at 4 a.m. What this allowed me to do was realize that I'm extremely more productive in the morning, and also allowed me to break free from that routine that I was used to, and allowed me to change up my routine and spark creativity. So training yourself to become immune to this fight or flight instinct can come from a lot of different forms, by incorporating small risks in your lives. For example, this can come from taking a new route at school, or asking out that cute guy or girl in your class, or even just taking a chance to do something that you never thought you were able to accomplish. So the poster child for getting uncomfortable is Google, one of the most revolutionary companies in the world. So imagine you were a project lead at Google and someone asked you to rethink the idea of internet access. What kind of ideas would come to mind? Maybe more fiber optics to make it faster, or longer and thicker wires to stretch to more remote parts of the world. But this is not Google's way of thinking. Google doesn't think of innovation as a linear progression. They think exponentially. By adopting the idea of 10 times thinking, they're able to think of completely radical ways beyond other people's expectations that puts them in this position of becoming one of the most revolutionary companies in the world. And let's take Project Loon, for example. That's their solution to the problem for internet access. Instead of having more wires, they wanted to get internet to the most remote parts of the world by high-altitude balloons. So basically, balloon-powered internet. So from the outside, this might seem completely radical, and especially when there's $200 million involved, which is how much it would take to create and engineer one of these balloons. And throughout this process, Google became unsuccessful in many ways, including being wrong about the altitude in the air or the environment of the stratosphere, which resulted